Alright, hey guys, this is Monday, April 27th for Algebra 1. And so first thing today, we have a quiz. It is quiz 34. And so I'm just going to talk you through it real quick. I'm not going to do any really, because we've hit it pretty hard. But I am going to kind of talk you through it and review through it. So just be looking at your quiz right now, and I'll kind of walk you through the kind of process for each problem. And so, on the quiz 1 through 3, they say evaluate each rational expression at the given values. If the resulting value is undefined, write undefined. So remember, undefined is when you have a 0 in the denominator. And so all you're going to be doing is plugging in what the x into the x, y into y, z into z for each problem. So like for number 1, you just plug a 5 into the y, a 2 into the x, and then a 1 into the z, and evaluate it. And then you just multiply the stuff through, and then you should get either a whole number or a fraction, and that will be your answer. If you wind up with a 0 in the denominator of the fraction, then it is undefined. So 2 and 3 both work that way. You're just plugging in the values into x, y, and z. 4 and 5 says indicate the values at which each expression is undefined. So remember that. You're just going to set your denominator equal to 0 and solve. So if you have to factor, you have to factor. But outside of that, you just set your denominator equal to 0 and solve. 6 and 7, you're writing the reciprocal. So remember, the reciprocal is just where you flip the fraction. So the denominator becomes your numerator. Numerator becomes your denominator. And then 8, 9, and 10, you're actually solving, you're multiplying, and then doing one division. So remember, when you multiply, you're just basically going to distribute it through. Make sure you get it distributed. When you multiply variables, you add their exponents. And then you're going to make sure you factor. So whatever you get on the top, make sure you factor that down. Make sure you factor the bottom down. And then that way you can see if anything cancels. And then whatever cancels, you just mark it out. And then whatever's left stays in your answer. And then remember to keep track of your denominator where your denominators are 0. Because that's what x can't be. Whenever your denominator is a 0, whatever makes that a 0, that's what your x can't be. So mainly that's just doing the multiplication and then factoring to make sure you know how to factor. So remember your rules for guess and check and so forth and all that. And so that will be the quiz. What I'm going to do, so you pause it right here and go ahead and take the quiz, replay over what I was explaining, walking you through it if you need to, but that will be for your quiz. Alright, so you can pause and do that. Now I'm going to get into today's lesson. So today's lesson is just adding or subtracting expressions with a common denominator. And so basically what you're going to do is you're just going to be adding or subtracting the numerator together, and then factoring it if you need to see what cancels and so forth and so on. And so we'll look at number 1 first. This is on page 424. We'll do number 1 up on the board. And so number 1 says 8x plus over 3 plus 2x over 3. And so if you notice, you have a common denominator on these, so the bottom. And so when we add this together, the denominator is going to be what it is. You don't add the common denominator. So you don't do 3 plus 3 is 6 or anything like that. The denominator stays the same. And so I know my denominator is going to be a 3. It stays the same. But I'm going to combine these two separate fractions into one on the top. And so you're simply going to do 8x plus 2x. And so I'm simply going to add the 8x and the 2x. I just add those together. And when you add variables like this, you add just the number, because you have 8 x's and you're adding 2 x's, and so that means you have 10 x's left. And then what you would do is you're going to see, okay, can my top factor and can it cancel with anything in the bottom? And then keep in mind where the bottom equals 0, and that would be one of your undefined portions that you have to keep track of. This one right here is just 10x divided by 3. That's just our answer. You can't factor 10x. You can't do anything with the 3. 10 and 3 have nothing in common. And so that is simply your answer, 10x over 3. So again, just add the numerators, and then you can go through the process from there. All right, the next one I have for us to do is number 8 up on the board. And so again, we have a common denominator, so the denominator is going to stay the same. And so the denominator will stay a 4x. And then I'm going to combine the numerator and basically add those two together. One thing to keep in mind of, when you're adding it, you can just basically add it straight across. If you have a minus sign, you got to make sure to distribute the minus sign to every term to the right. That way you keep track of the sign. So here, this one's just adding. So first I'm going to combine my x's. So I have a 5x and a 2x. So when I add those together, I end up with 7x. And then when I have a negative 3 and I have a negative 1, so that would be a negative 4. So I have 7x minus 4 over 4x. Okay? Then I'm going to see, can I cancel anything? Now, what you can't do is cancel x and x like that. That's a no-go. For you to be able to cancel, remember, it has to be exactly the same. And so this is 7x minus 4 altogether, divided by 4x. Since 7x minus 4, there's nothing that within 7x minus 4 that 4x has in common. You just have to leave that as your answer. That's as far as you can go. But the rule is, once you get to this point, once you've added the numerators together, you can look to factor if you can. This one doesn't factor, so again, that's a pretty straightforward, easy one, where that's your answer. Next, I have 14, so this is where we're going to start taking a step up. And so 14 has x squared over x plus 1 plus 2x plus 1 over x plus 1. So what I have to do is, I know my denominator is going to be x plus 1. My numerator I have to add together. So I have to add x squared to 2x plus 1. So when you do that, you can't combine anything. So it's just simply x squared plus 2x plus 1. Okay, now I can look and say, okay, I need to factor my denominator and factor my numerator and see if anything cancels. Okay, my denominator is already factored, x plus 1. My numerator I have to factor, so again you're going to do guess and checks. And so you're going to look at this plus sign and say, okay, that plus sign means when I factor this, it's going to be the same sign, and I'm trying to get to a 2x, so it's a rule of factoring. We just have to know this stuff by now. And so the factors of 1 are 1 and 1. The factors of x squared are x and x. Okay, so the x and the x are going to come down here. And then the 1 and the 1 is our only option, so it's going to go there. Remember to check it, you're always going to do the x times the 1, that's 1x. Then this 1 times the x, that's another x, so that's 2x, which is what we're looking for, so that checks. And so we have x plus 1 times x plus 1 over the x plus 1, which is in the denominator. And so if you look on number 14 here, basically what happens is you're going to look to see what cancels. Notice this x plus 1 here cancels with this x plus 1 here. And so that leaves us an answer of simply x plus 1 as our answer. Okay, that's all that's left is just that one. Now, what you have to keep in mind of is where does, since we had that x plus 1 in the denominator and it's really still there even though it canceled, we have to say, okay, x plus 1 equals 0. And so we had to subtract 1, and x equals negative 1. And so x cannot equal negative 1. And so our answer would be x plus 1, where x does not equal negative 1, because we had to make sure we accounted for that 0 that was in there, that undefined portion that was originally in there. So your answer would be x plus 1, where x does not equal negative 1. And so that would be how you do it. So again, same process, you just combine the stuff up top, and then factor it and see what cancels, and then make sure you keep track of where it can't equal 0 in the denominator. So another one we will look at is 23. And again, you can replay this video as many times as necessary to get it. So I'm just going through it to make sure we got it down, and then you can kind of replay it. Again, I'm open for questions. If you need help, all you have to do is contact me, and we can go through it. So 23 here, again, the denominators are the same, and so the denominator is going to be 2x squared minus 10x plus 12. That will be our denominator. Then I have to combine my numerators. And so the first thing I'm going to do is look for the x squared terms. And so I have the 3x squared combines with an x squared. And so x squared and 3x squared when I'm subtracting. So keep in mind here I'm subtracting. And so this is very important. Since I'm subtracting, I want to go ahead and distribute that negative all the way through. And so I want to change that to plus, and then distribute a negative all the way through, which basically just means I change every sign. So instead of having an x squared, I'm going to change that to a negative x squared. Instead of having a minus 2x, I'm going to change that to a positive 2x. And then instead of having a positive 13, I'm going to change that to a negative 13. That way I don't have to do any subtraction. I can just add the negative to it and then just add. And so 3x squared minus x squared leaves me with 2x squared. Then I have a negative 4x combining with a positive 2x, which leaves me a negative 2x. Then I have a positive 1 combining with a negative 13, which gives me a negative 12. And so look what I have going on here. They don't quite cancel out completely. I have a 2x squared minus 10x plus 12, and then a 2x squared minus 2x minus 12. So now what I have to do is simply factor the top and factor the bottom and see if any of the factors will cancel. And so when I do that, factoring 2x squared minus 2x minus 12, this negative sign tells me that there's going to be two different signs. And so I'm going to have one here, that's a plus. Then I'm going to have one here, that's a minus. And so the factors of negative 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Then the factors of 2x squared over here are 1x and 2x. So I know that one of these is going to be 1x and one of these is going to be 2x. So I'm just going to guess that it's that way, 2x and 1x. Okay, then what happens is we have to figure out what goes here. Remember, we're trying to get back to a negative 2. So I have to do 2 times something and then 1 times something here. And I'm trying to get back to that negative 2. So I'm going to try a, you can just guess and check. I'm going to put the 2 here and I will put a 6 here. And then I'm just going to check it to see if that's the real factors. So I have to do 2x times a negative 2, which is a negative 4x. Then I'm going to take this 6 times a 1x is a positive 6x. And so when I check that, negative 4 plus 6 is a positive 2x. And so notice I was looking for a negative 2x. So what does that mean when I check it and I get the right numbers, but I got the wrong sign? Right, you're just going to flip the order. So I'm just going to change this one to a minus and change that one to the plus, and then it will check and I would get the positive 4 there and the negative 6 here. So then it would be negative 2x. So those would be the two factors. So that was factoring the numerator. Again, factoring is our base knowledge. I know it's a lot of work, but this is built off stuff we should already know how to do. And so that's why it's the only new thing is basically combining it and then canceling it. And so the denominator is 2x squared minus 10x plus 12. And so I'm going to factor that. Again, this time I have a plus sign here. Plus 12 means I have the same signs. And so I'm going to be factoring this one, but I'm going to have the same signs. And I'm looking for a negative number, which means I have two negatives. So I know both of these are going to be negative. Okay? Then factoring this, I have the factors of 12, which are again 1 and 12, 3 and 4, and 2 and 6. Then the factors of 2x are 1 and 1x and 2x. So again, I know both of these are going to be 2x and then 1x. So then I just have to figure out what goes here. And they're going to be the same sign. So when I add them together, I want to get to a negative 10. Negative 10. So what I'm going to do is just guess. I'm going to put, what can I do here? I don't know, we'll do 4 here. 3 there, I don't know. What can we do here? 2 and 6. So we'll put the 6 here, the 2 here. I don't know, it's just guess and check. You just have to go through it and guess and check it. So when I check that, I will do 2x times 2, negative 2, which would be a negative 4. So negative 4x. Then I would do the negative 6 times 1, which would be a negative 6x. And then that gives me the negative 10x. So that checks. I was looking for a negative 10 and I got a negative 10. So that would be the factors. Now I just have to look and say, okay, what cancels? What cancels? And so I see a 2x minus 6 and a 2x minus 6. So that cancels. This is a 1x plus 2, and that's a 1x minus 2, so that doesn't cancel. So that means my final answer then would simply be that 1x plus 2 on top, and that 1x minus 2 on bottom. So that would be my answer in simplified form. Then the question just is, okay, where can it not equal 0? Where can it not equal 0? And so you have to go back, and 23 is where our x cannot equal 0. And so basically, since this is the one that canceled out, this is the one we need to look at. And so since it's the one that kind of went away, and so that 2x minus 6, you would have to set 2x minus 6 equal to 0. So then you would add 6 and get 2x equals 6, then divide by 2, and so x would equal 3. And so that would be what x cannot equal. So x cannot equal 3 because this portion right here was really there. It's gone away now, but it's really there. And so that would be where you would find your 0 that you couldn't have in the denominator. And so you would set that equal to 0 and get x equals 3, so that's what x could not equal. And so pretty much they're all going to work that way. The only question is really, can you do the addition? Can you add the things together, the like terms together? And then can you factor and cancel? That's really all it is. If your factoring skills aren't good, you're going to struggle a little bit, but stick with it, keep doing them, keep working them. If you have questions, get with me and I can walk you through it and help you a little bit. That's fine, but don't freak out just because it's a lot of work. You got to do it, you got to learn it, and we got to get it together. And so your assignment today is going to be 1 through 26. Again, they're all going to work like that. You just add the tops together and then factor the top, factor the bottom, see what cancels, and then keep track of what canceled out, keep track of where your 0 would be in the denominator. So that's the lesson, 1 through 26. If you have questions, ask me. Hope y'all do well. Hope y'all have a good day.